Hey guys, good morning. Mr. Snyder here with a real quick thought about culture and collective learning. But first, I wanted to make a distinction about collective learning that some of us have perhaps been struggling with. Collective learning isn't necessarily uh, the transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next. It's the idea of not only the transfer of knowledge from one idea to the next, but the constant improvement upon that. Now, sometimes we can improve upon certain ideas and practices and things until we've been given different other advantages like technology. So, the combining of ideas with technology or the advancement of technology through ideas, they are like inextricably connected as we move on from one step to the next in this generational collective learning diagram or idea. All right. So, I hope that makes sense. Um, in terms of what uh, differentiates in terms of what sets us apart from other species, such as animals, like a lioness, right? Uh, Teaching her cubs how to hunt. Sure, that could be an example of collective learning, but are they improving upon that practice of hunting from generation to generation? Are lions effectively getting better at hunting, right? So, lions have been hunting for the same way throughout thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. So, how does that different? How does that differentiate from humans? Well, if I find out a better way to do something, all right, I can pass that on to my next generation, all right, or I can share with people. But here's the advantage that we have in today's world. If I find out a better way to do something, I'm able to not only share it with you all via this telecommunication, but I can put it out there in the internet. I can write it down. We have forms of languages that we're able to leave for other generations to read and see and follow. Lions can't do that. Lions don't write things down. For what we know, lions don't have uh, a symbolic language that allows them to pass on these ideas. They do it through action. So, right then and there, that gives us that advantage in collective learning where we have these symbols, our alphabet, for example, that when they're arranged in a certain way, they form words, they form ideas, sentences, coherent thought. Lions don't have that. So there's the big distinction between us and the rest of the animal kingdom when it comes to collective learning. We have developed speech and writing and these symbolic languages that allow us to think of things that don't even exist yet. For example, when David Christian in his article talked about a pink elephant, right? There are no pink elephants unless they're painted pink, but there's no naturally occurring pink elephants. But you sure as heck can picture a pink elephant or a rainbow elephant or an invisible elephant. See, you can't see it. It's always there, right? But that's the point. So think about that when we talk about collective learning, this continual addition and building upon the knowledge, right? I gave you guys the example of tying our shoes as collective learning, right? Well, sure, that's collective learning, but were shoelaces the first thing, or was that built upon this idea of conforming our shoes to our feet? And what was the first set of shoes? And when the humans ran into the problem of shoes not being able to stay on, well, how did they adhere those? How did they affix that article of clothing to their feet? Right? Was it a strap at first? Did they just wrap like a band around it? How has that improved over time? So that's just a thought that I was having there for a little bit. What I want to show you guys now is for our debate, right? For our debate coming up, all right, we want to have two definitions, two working definitions of collective learning and culture. And this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. Let's start off with collective learning. You can see here collective learning. preserving information. I'm just going to highlight it here for you. Preserving information, sharing it with one another, and passing it to the next generation helps us to create entirely new forms of complexity. So collective learning is allowing us to build to better things. And we're arguing as to whether or not culture is a result of collective learning. Right? So is the culture that we experience today a result of the previous generations? Okay, this information sharing with one another and passing it on. Well, let's look at culture. Oh, nice. It's a smart looking cat. All right. So this is from Merriam-Webster. I mean, it's the dictionary's website. And I took our collective learning definition from Big History Project, so it's consistent, right? We're not working with different definitions. We're all within the same context. So let's see here. Definition of culture. I got a lot of them. Let's see. So I am going to go with, let's just go with 1A. All right, let's stick with 1A when it comes to our definition of culture. The customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. Also, the characteristic features of everyday existence, such as diversions or way of life shared by people in a place or time. That's it right there. All right, we're going with 1A, the second definition. Here's why. Shared by people in a place or time. Place and time can be defined in so many different ways where culture isn't consistent throughout all of them, right? Culture is not consistent throughout all of them. Think about it this way. You have a different culture in your household than you do when you are hanging out with your friends, than when you are in the classroom, than when you are with other family members, than when you are out in society. So while culture is defined by this, where we go, and if we step into a different room or to a different building or to a different environment, the culture changes within that. So think about that. There are layers of culture within culture, right? Think about a culture that you want to talk about, like the culture of the United States. Well, in the culture of the United States, there's these expectations, right? These shared characteristics of everyday existence. But then that culture of the United States also has a culture of different, like, sporting teams, right? When you go to a sporting event in one city, it may be a completely different experience based on that local culture than it would in another city. Let's break it down to something a little bit more relationable. Classrooms. Think about your old schools. Think about places where you've been, where you've come from, and how that culture perhaps is either similar or different to what we experience at the neighborhood academy. How has that changed? Right? So it's the same culture in the United States, same culture. Perhaps you were living in the same neighborhood, but then a completely different culture in the classroom. How has collective learning either attributed to that, or has it not attributed to it at all? Is it a result of that place and time, or is it something that really just changes day to day, year to year? What do you guys think? So those are my thoughts on culture and collective learning. We have our two working definitions of collective learning and culture. And I really want you to dig deep and think about how your culture is affected by collective learning. Right? Is what you do and what you practice based off of, generations and generations and generations of buildup, or is it something that has just come up in this generation, and whatever you pass on is going to be completely different? Like, how are you thinking about this? How are you applying it to your life? So take some time to really just let that sink in and digest a little bit. As you fill out this debate prep worksheet and you answer these questions, really tie yourselves into it and use your world experiences to help guide your thinking as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Figure we can get a little bit of like different scenery. It's my backyard here. It's too nice of a day to be stuck inside. So I hope you guys are all doing well. I look forward to hearing some of your responses and some of your thoughts as you fill this debate prep worksheet. And take care until then, guys. Looking forward to seeing you all in person. But I guess this will just have to suffice until now. All right? Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Stay safe.